Are you thinking about making that move to Pearland? Well, in this video, I got you covered. I'm gonna give you the good, the bad, the ugly, everything you need to know about moving to the greater Pearland area. I've been doing a lot of touring out there recently with some clients, and I wanted to just give you my perspective of everything you need to know about the area before you make that move to Pearland. Hi, my name is Aaron, and every week I'm helping buyers relocate to and throughout the greater city of Houston and the surrounding suburbs. So if you need to know anything about where to eat, sleep, live, play, hit me up morning, noon, or night. I'm your guy. It doesn't matter if you're a day, a week, a month, a year, 2 years, 3 years out. Hit me up. I would love to be a resource to you. And so like I said, over the last couple weeks, I've been out there more and more with some clients that are looking to make the relocation to the greater Houston metro, and they've just been gravitating towards the Pearland area. And so I wanted to give a breakdown and an overview of everything that I told them to see if it can be the best suburb for you. And to get this show started, let's talk about location. Where is Pearland? If you're not familiar with where it is a South Houston suburb. It's about 15 to 16 miles away from downtown city of Houston. Just depending on kind of where you are located. Pearland, for everything that we call Pearland, is basically this whole little shape that I'm drawing around right now. And so it definitely stretches from the 35 side to west of 288. You know, some people call some stuff old Pearland, new Pearland. What I basically know of what Pearland is, you know, the newer developments are over here. They have a couple developments that are over here as well that are brand new. But on the closer to the 35 side going towards Friendswood, you're going to have a lot of older communities and established neighborhoods and some communities that were built in like the late 80s, 90s to the early 2000s as well. But on this side, you have the Shadow Creek Ranch side, which is a little bit more of a newer community that has a different sort of feel. You also have the town center and all that stuff over here as well on the west side of 288. And so when I think of Pearland, I'm more towards leaning on this side of the world, just because a lot of the things that I know, like, and do, and most of my family members are on the west side of 288. But there are some parts that stretch over to nearly the Friendswood, kind of Pasadena East sort of area. And not too dissimilar from its cousin to the southwest, Sugarland. The land that can be considered Pearland is basically landlocked between Houston and the surrounding suburbs. You know, like I said, Friendswood has it basically on the southeast side. Clear Lake has it on this east side. If you go down south, you're going to start running into your Alvins, your Manvilles, your Iowa colonies, Rasharons, all these places that are south of it. And so it really is kind of landlocked to this little part of town, or this little suburb area of South Houston. And there's not so much more that they can do. Like I said, there's a couple little pockets here and there that are still having some build outs. But for the most part, the Pearland area is going to be kind of similar to what Sugarland is, in that it is already landlocked. And the communities have been there for a little while now, and they're doing either their final steps or their final phases of what, you know, is being built out in the Pearland area. But it's not going to be this super large bit of expansion, because, you know, you can't go south, because Manville and all those communities, you have your Pomonas, you have your Del Bellos. If you go further south, you got the Iowa colonies, the Meridianas, and all those places that are already out there that have taken up so much of this land. And if you try to go out east, you're going to have your Friendswood and your Clear Lake. So there's not much for the builders and brand new construction out there. There's a couple, and I'll hop on HAR right now to kind of show you what I mean. So hopping in HAR right now, kind of as I talked about a few seconds ago, this is basically the border of Pearland, of what we know Pearland is. I would call this East Pearland and this West Pearland. Some people will call this New Pearland and this Old Pearland. I don't care about any of that, right? Pearland stretches east and west a pretty long way, from the west side of 288 damn near to almost 45. And when you click on and look at these, most of these aren't going to be new construction homes. A lot of these, like I was touring with my clients, are going to be resale homes from like the early 2000s or late 90s. And so when you go on and you click on and you look at new construction only, you're going to see that this goes from about 200 options to about 19 options. And a lot of these are kind of in that zone of between Friendswood and Pearland. And some of these are going to be in the Shadow Creekish kind of side, hovering around Fresno. but most of them are kind of at the very edges of what we have left of the Pearland border, which is basically these outskirts right here. And even though there aren't a ton of brand new communities popping up in the greater Pearland area, you still have options that are somewhat affordable. The average single family home sales price right now in the greater Houston metro is like $450,000. And so you can still find what I would consider a starter home of under $400,000 that is brand new. Now, it's not going to be the hugest home, but you will still have those options where that price point is kind of obsolete in some of the other suburbs surrounding the greater city of Houston. So looking out into like a Woodlands or some parts of Cypress, that price point isn't really as realistic or attainable in the single family space. You may be able to find a townhome that's brand new, but for many communities, you aren't going to be able to find brand new construction in the suburbs that are tied to good schools and good infrastructure for under $400,000, and you can still do that in Pearland. And so hopping back over into HAR, let's just check out what we can get for about $400,000 right now. You can still get over 2,000 square feet, which is pretty good. Now, this isn't going to be a super massive house, but you can still get the tall ceilings. You can still get, you know, a 3-bed, 4-bedroom house that'll give you a game room, media space, all that stuff, all the modern finishes and things that you will want, granite, quartz, nice style homes, right? But these aren't going to be your mega mansions like you would have gotten a couple years ago for $400,000 in these same areas, right? So things have definitely changed. Times have definitely changed, and we're just going to make the adjustments that we got to make. But you can still get a really nice size house, something that you're proud to call home for a fairly affordable budget out in the Pearland area. But one of the reasons why I really love Pearland and why I think a lot of my clients and family decided to move south to Pearland is because it has so many amenities. It has all the restaurants. You're going to have your Best Buys. You're going to have your Home Depots, your movie theaters. You're going to have your town centers for your shopping, eating, all the things that you're going to ever want to do. You're going to have all of that in the greater Pearland area. So you don't need to feel like you have to go into downtown Houston to have fun or to play or to live your life, right? But on the other side of that, if you feel like you want to live in the suburbs and enjoy all that it has to offer in the actual center of the city, you're less than 20 miles away from doing it. So it is definitely one of the closest suburbs to downtown Houston. And so this is definitely a sweet spot for those people that kind of want to be out of the mix but in the mix at the same time. And one of the things that most of my clients like to do is hit the Pearland town center. Like I said, you can do some shopping, some eating. There's a bunch of stuff that you can do over there. There's going to be little events going on kind of throughout the year. It's just a really great part of town. And like I said, you get that seclusion of being in a suburb that's really nice and really clean. And you also get the amenities of being somewhere that's really nice, not too far from the city of Houston, if you want to travel to and from to do what you got to do inside of the loop. But checking out stores here, you're going to have stuff that you would have in your mall. So you're going to have your Forever 21s, your Aeropostales. You're going to have your Barnes and Nobles. You're going to have your Dillard's, Victoria's Secret, all that kind of stuff that you would have in a traditional mall, you're going to have in this town center. So you don't have to feel like you have to go to the Galleria or anything like that to get the shopping bug that you need. So who do I think this is perfect for? I think this suburb is perfect for that person that is kind of like me and my wife that are looking for that escape out of the city. We've done the city life, and to get the kind of home that we want to have in the city would just be super unaffordable. It would be unrealistic. And so you're going to have that person that wants to kind of be in the mix and play and still go and do the things like go to Discovery Green and go down to the zoo and the museums and all that stuff in the center of the city. But you want that quiet lifestyle, that gated lifestyle, or that community feel that you would get in an actual suburb. I think this kind of community is going to be perfect for most people falling into that category. And as we just saw, you're gonna find a nice size house without breaking the bank. You don't have to spend over $400,000 to get a really nice house. Now, you may find that to get the size that you want or to get the finishes you want, it may need to be a couple years older here or there, but you can still see that at this point in time, in the craziest market that we have ever had, you're still able to get a 2,000 plus square foot house for under 400,000, which is crazy in the greater Houston metro right now. But who do I think this place is not for? Now, if like I say all the time, if you are someone that needs to go to the opposite side of that beltway, so if you need to work in Humble, or if you're working in Spring, or if you're working in the Woodlands, or if you're working in Cypress, any of these places that isn't a straight shot from the greater Pearland area, I don't think that this is going to be a great shot for you. It's not going to be the worst commute to some of these other neighboring communities. So if you're going to Manville or Alvin or Missouri City or any of these places that are kind of hovering in that southwest area, I think you'll be fine. You'll probably get away with a 30 to 35 minute commute, but at the moment you have to get to the other side of the loop or the other side of the beltway, it's a no dice kind of situation for you. I've had to travel this a couple times to go and tour with my clients. I live currently on the opposite side of the loop. I'm in the Independence Heights area right now, and traveling out to that side of town, it would often take me an hour to get there during like non-peak traffic times, just because there's a lot of situations and a lot of places on the interstate, whether it's being on 45 to get to 288 or taking 610 to get down to 288, whatever you got to do to get down to the south area is going to be a little bit of a headache with some of those interstate exchanges if you have to travel a long way. And the next thing that I love about Pearland, and that really draws my clients in that are relocating to the area, is the variety of homes. On the west side of 288, you can get that newer feel, kind of cookie cutter sort of deed restricted community that some are gated, some are not, but you have the pools, the splash pads, all of the things that you would come to think about for a brand new community out in a suburb. You can have that sort of feel for not too much money out in the west side of Pearland or west of 288. And so you can see that for not too much money, you can get almost 4,000 square foot home that looks super nice, that is going to have the modern finishes and things that you want, that's just a couple years old, so you still have some of your warranties. You're going to be able to get that style of home in Pearland. You also can get some super luxury kind of places, right? If you want to have that pool, you want to have that lake view, you can get that sort of living as well out in some communities in the Pearland area, right? So you can have this kind of a vibe out in Pearland with the nice tall ceilings. You're just going to get a more estate style feel on those larger footprints. I know one of my best friends lives in a great location out in Pearland, and they have a kind of more of an estate section at the front of their subdivision that has the gates and their own walking trails and their own lake and all that stuff, right? And it's just a whole different vibe from the other sections of that community, right? So you can get the lifestyle that you want to live and have in the Pearland area depending on what your budget is. So the range that you can get even on the same west side of 288 is a huge variety. And when you get over to the areas of town that are a little less deed restricted or are a little bit older, where things aren't as strict, you can get some properties that are super big on a lot of land and things of that nature, right? So it is definitely a place where you can get a variety, and that's one of the reasons why I love it, and that's one of the reasons why people that are gravitated towards moving to the area love it as well, because it's not going to be the same style house throughout the whole entire area. And kind of to show you what I mean, you can have a place like this on the eastern edge of Pearland that's on 3 acres, and it's just this large, big old house with no neighbors in sight, right? So all of these sort of lifestyles and things that you could want to have, you can get it down in Pearland. And like many people that are moving to a suburb community like Pearland, they often have questions about the school districts and what schools you're going to be tied to. How does it look for those kiddos as you're either starting a family or growing a family out in the Pearland area? Because Pearland stretches west and east so far, you're going to be spliced up in a few different zones, and we can do a quick little analysis of what each of those zones have to offer right now in the greater Pearland area. And so because Pearland is spread out the way that it is, you're going to be spliced up in a few different districts. And so you're going to have some that are in Alvin, you're going to have some that are in Pearland, you're going to have some that are in Pasadena ISD. And so let's hop on over to niche.com right now and just kind of do a brief overview of what the school districts are like in all 3 of those locations. So hopping on over into Alvin, this is going to be for most of those schools that are going to be on the west side of 288. you're looking at an A- rating, high on diversity, academics and teachers, you're going to be B+. But this is going to be a solid school district. What I'm seeing right now is that many of those Pearland communities on the west and some of the Manville communities are tied to Alvin ISD. And so you're going to be in a solid school system if you are tied to Alvin ISD. For the bulk of the people in Pearland in the middle, you're going to be tied to Pearland ISD. And so diversity rated an A, teachers rated pretty good, academics pretty good as well. #1 school district in Brazoria County, which is for basically those that are south of Harris County. And so this is a pretty good school rating, and a bulk of the actual schools for the greater Pearland area, especially those more established ones, are going to fall within the Pearland ISD. And then last but not least, for those that are going to be on that far east side, for those that are hugging up against that Clear Lake, Pasadena, Friendswood sort of vibe, you are going to be tied to the Pasadena ISD. Diversity rated as a B, not as good as the other ones. Teachers and academics are similar. So again, solid school systems for either one. They're all going to basically be B rated or higher. And so I don't think you can miss too much, but you're going to see that you're probably going to pay a little bit more of a premium if you're going to be a little bit more west versus being a little bit more east, based on the school ratings and the amenities and things that you have in those locations. On the west side, you're going to have the town center and more of the newer attractions and newer build outs. In the center of it, you're going to have the more established communities that were there in the early 90s, early 2000s. And as you get a little bit closer to Friendswood, you're going to really start to see some of those older properties and ranch style, farm style kind of houses that are on a bunch of land and acreage. And so you're going to see the differences and swings between the different styles of living and the premium that you're going to pay throughout. The next elephant in the room is, did it flood during Harvey? Is it a flood risk? If it can rain, it can flood. That's the best way that I can put it, right? And so everything you have to check is case by case, house by house, street by street, neighborhood by neighborhood. You can't just make any blanket assumption about flooding anywhere in the greater Houston metro, and none of the suburbs are exempt, and neither is Pearland. So in my experiences, Pearland did experience some flooding due to Harvey and some of these other more recent flood events. It's not atypical for our suburbs to flood. A lot of them are kind of cut through with creeks and rivers and things that either tie to the Buffalo Bayou from the center of the city, or the Brazos, or some of these other just really gnarly creeks and lakes that just kind of run around and through our city of Houston. And so Pearland had its own issues just like anybody else, but there's some things on our side that we're going to check out to make sure that when you're going to buy a home and that you're touring, that you're going to feel comfortable with making that purchase, because we checked everything that we can on our side to make sure that you aren't buying a flood limit. And so the first thing that we check out when we're looking at any of these places is that we're going to check out the flood maps. This is something that I have access to. If you want to do some digging online, you can find a FEMA flood map as well. But this is something that I have access to as your real estate agent. And so the first thing that we would do is come in here and check out to see whether or not we're in a flood zone. Now, a lot of my clients, a lot of my family, a lot of my friends are on this 288 side. And like I said, most of them, for the most part, they were pretty good during this, right? Some of my best friends and family live in this southern part of Shadow Creek, and they came out okay, right? They had no issues, no real drama. The north side of their community was not as fortunate. Some of them had some water issues, right? And just kind of diving in and looking at what the zones are doing, you can see that as you get kind of more and more to the north of that subdivision, you're at a greater and greater risk for flood elevation and flood issues. So this is definitely something that you're going to want to check out on a house by house basis. The next thing that we're going to check out is the seller disclosure, which tells us a little bit more in depth about that specific property and whether or not it had any flood issues during Harvey or after. And so diving in on that lake house that we looked at, as the super luxury lake house living example. This house was built in 2006, so they definitely would have known whether or not it flooded. And so the next thing that we would be checking is going down on what this document is, which is which is the seller's disclosure, to check out the flood sections to see if anything has ever happened in that location. And so checking out here, they're saying that they are not in the flood zone. checking out the map, they were not located in a flood zone. They currently say they do not have any flood insurance. And this you have to take that with a grain of salt. You have to do a little bit more research. What I typically do with my clients is check out some other sold houses around the area just to make sure that everybody's being honest. And then this is probably the biggest point is, have they ever filed a claim on this house because of flood damage? And the next section said that they have not. And so that's usually a good indication that you probably didn't have flooding during Harvey, and you likely wouldn't have flooding in that area, because if it stood the test of time during Harvey, we're going to need to have something that's much bigger, badder, meaner. And at that case, all bets are off, and we're all just going to be holding on to our seats waiting to see what's happening anyway. But kind of the golden rule here right now is, if it didn't flood during Harvey, the chances of it flooding in the future with something that is not as strong as Harvey is unlikely, and it's a pretty safe bet. But no matter what, like I tell all my clients, get flood insurance. It doesn't matter where you're staying, get flood insurance. If you're in the X zone, get flood insurance. It'll be worth it in the event that anything ever happened to your home. And the last thing I want to touch on are the taxes. And to hop on in there, probably the easiest way to attack this is to hop on HAR and just kind of show you the range. You're going to have some locations that are a little bit older, a little bit more established, that are going to have some taxes in the low 2s. I've even seen a couple in the high 1s. And on the newer side, on those sides that are west of 288, a lot of those communities are going to have those high 2s to low 3s in the tax rate, just based on being a little bit newer and around more amenities. So you're going to get a range throughout the whole Pearland area, depending on whether you're going a little bit older and more established for character, or you're going a little bit more brand new and buy all of the new flashy things in Pearland. And so back on our house that keeps on giving, this is an example of a house that was built in the early 2000s, but it's on the newer side, on the newer developed side of what I would call New Pearland or West Pearland. And it was built in 2006. It has a tax rate of 3.5%. Now that's rivaling some of those communities like Cypress, like Town Lake and Bridgeland, and some of those communities that are super premier that a lot of people are flocking to. Even as a house that is 2006, that's, you're pretty much out of warranty on all things, right? And so to have a house that is out of warranty and still be paying 3.5% for taxes, that says a lot about how high taxes have been on the new construction side. And the reason for that is because these areas that maybe were traditionally farmland and didn't have the infrastructure and the things that you needed for sewer, waste, water, trash, all of those amenities, investors come in and issue bonds to basically jumpstart that community and get things up and rolling. And as a payment for receiving that, your tax bill is a little bit higher than most areas that don't need that mud jumpstart. So that's why most of these brand new communities are super expensive, is because they have to use that mud starter pack to get things rolling. And you eventually pay those off. And as you pay those down, your taxes come down year after year after year. It looks like these are still holding pretty tough. And I know me and my buddy had a convo about this a couple of days ago, about the taxes that he's paying out there on his house. And they've been holding there for them for about 5 years now. So it is definitely, you can have some areas that are super expensive, and you can have some that are a little bit, like I said, more established, that are a little bit less expensive. I know I was touring last week and we were looking at places that were in the tax range of like 2.4. So it really is just going to depend on where you end up picking. So how did I do? Did I scare you away from moving to Pearland? I hope that I did not. It is a great location. It is one of the closest suburbs that Houston has to offer. It gives you so many amenities, so many of the things that you want to have that you don't need to make the trek into the greater Houston area. You're going to have your restaurants. You're going to have the decent schools. You're going to have the clean and nice communities that have the walking trails in the park, or you can have the secluded farm style, ranch style land type homes if you want that as well. It's not going to break the bank, and it's going to be a great opportunity to have that best of both worlds, where you're tucked off in the burbs but close enough to the city to still live and play in both. If this is something that you're interested in, I would love to be a resource to you. All of my info is going to be in the bio below. If you're not sold on the Pearland area, I'll drop some more suburb vlogs of places that I've been touring recently over here. YouTube thinks that you should check this one out. I'll drop that video on the screen right now. I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope you have an amazing day.